Rolling strut boxes are a modern version of the ever-popular trench box. They employ movable, one-piece strut assemblies, which is a great addition to the versatility and practicality of this equipment. The panels are 3.5 metres wide by 4 metres high, which ensures the rapid shoring of trench runs up to a maximum of 6 metres deep, with the addition of an upper box in non-urban environments where ground conditions are reasonable. They are generally used in multiples to continuously support a length of trench. The major benefit of rolling strut systems is that they facilitate parallel panel movement during the installation, which vastly reduces the potential for horizontal soil movements. The increased strength and versatility of rolling strut boxes allows them to cope with step trenches, longer pipe lengths and much greater trench widths. They also have a higher understrut clearance than conventional fixed strut trench boxes. The boxes are typically 4.5 tons, so it is important to use a suitable sized excavator to handle them. Due to their size and weight, the boxes are usually delivered to site broken down in component form for on-site assembly. Limit pins are inserted in predetermined positions at each end of the strut carriage, in the upper and lower roller track. These pins restrict the up and down movement of the strut carriage in the panel. Two types of limit pins are available, the tuning fork type and the flat blade type. Each pin is retained by a spring-loaded ball detent pin. Both types of pin will work adequately in either top or bottom locations. However, it is preferable for the blade type to be used in the upper location, particularly when maximum understrut clearance is required, as the blade type of pin permits additional movement of the rolling strut. The tuning fork pin should be used for the lower positions. The pins should ideally be inserted from the inside of the panel. This enables the pins to be easily removed to adjust the strut height once the boxes are in the ground. 8 pins must always be used per box, 1 above and 1 below each rolling strut location. It is essential for the supervisor to be familiar with the equipment by first thoroughly reading the user guide supplied by Groundforce with the higher documentation. The first stage in the assembly is to identify all components, paying particular attention to the lifting and handling points on the box panels. Lifting points are denoted by red paint. Handling points, which are only used for assembling the box, are generally yellow. The panels must only be lifted at these designated points. The first plate is laid on reasonable flat ground with the rolling strut guide rail upwards. Insert the lower tuning fork type limit pins into the lowest slots in the guide rail. Insert and slide a rolling strut carriage down the rail guide, ensuring that the arrow on the slide rail carriage is pointing towards the top edge of the box. A second limit pin is inserted above the carriage to lock it into the guide rail. The remaining 3 rolling struts are assembled onto the guide rails of both plates in a similar manner, ensuring that the arrows on the struts point towards the top edge of the box. If required, strut extensions can be bolted onto the rolling strut using the force-applied 30mm grade 10.9 bolts. Only use bolts provided by Groundforce. The bolts should ideally be tightened to a torque of 1350 Nm. If a torque wrench is not available, a socket and extension bar can be used to tighten the bolts. Note, for longer struts, safe access must be provided to insert and tighten the bolts. Extension pieces should be added to both plates as required to centralise the final connection. Invert one of the pre-assembled shoring plates and lower the plate so the holes in the strut extensions line up. Insert the bolts and torque up as previously described. Great care must be taken not to trap fingers during this operation. The box is carefully lifted onto its cutting edge and is now ready for use. If required, top extension boxes are assembled in a similar manner. The boxes are designed to be installed by pushing them into the ground as the excavation proceeds. This method ensures that the sides of the trench are always supported. The installation commences by marking out the approximate width of the trench. Digging commences, regularly checking during the dig that the trench dimensions are correct and the sides are vertical. A competent person must assess as to how much the excavation can be pre-dug before inserting the box. It is recommended that this does not exceed 1 metre. The limit pins must now be removed so that the rolling struts can now slide on the plate runners. The upper limit pins are temporarily replaced in the top positions in the plate runners. The rolling struts are pushed down to contact the lower limit pins. Excavate a further ½ metre and push the plates down, followed by the rolling strut. Continue in this manner until the box reaches ground level or formation level is achieved. It will be necessary to use an extension box for trenches greater than 4 metres deep. These are anchored to the lower panels with the connector pieces and clips. Once the final depth is reached, handrail panels should be fitted for greater safety around the top of the trench. Ladder-safe combined handrails and access panels are available for most box types. Finally, the rolling struts must be put into position of the required understrut clearance. Check this with your supervisor. Move the lower limit pins into the next available slot under the struts to prevent accidental movement of the rolling strut during pipe laying operations. Once the box is installed, any voids between the back of the panels and the ground should be backfilled to prevent unwanted ground movement. Boxes are intended to be installed in multiples, end to end, depending on the length of the trench being supported, with boxes being leapfrogged as the pipe laying and backfill sequences proceeds. Repeat the installation process for the adjacent trench box as required. Please note that only a single box length is shown in this installation sequence. Pipes that are longer than the strut spacing can be inserted into the trench by moving the rolling struts up and down and sliding the pipes sideways in sequence. Please note that as a general rule, in trenches up to 4 metres deep, a minimum of 3 boxes will allow safe working in the middle section whilst excavation, backfilling and compaction operations take place in the end units. In trenches greater than 4 metres deep, more units, lower and upper modules, will be required to allow a safe angle of batter to the ground, typically 45 degrees at each end of the trench. The extraction process begins by first removing handrail panels. Backfill material is placed and compacted in accordance with the specification for the works. It is normal for this to be done in stages as the box is pulled out of the ground to minimise any voids. Extraction of box modules must be carried out using suitable chain slings attached to the dedicated lifting points, usually denoted by red paint. There are several ways in which the box can be removed from the trench. In granular ground conditions, as shown here, it may be possible to extract the box using a suitably sized excavator by rocking the box to ease it out of the ground. In heavier ground conditions, the box should be removed by the reversal of the installation sequence. Any chains used for the extraction of boxes must relate to the pulling capacity of the excavator, or damage to the chains can occur. Once the box is lifted clear, it must be stored on level ground for reuse or dismantled, which is basically a reverse of the assembly procedure. After disassembly, all components should be cleaned and stacked to await collection. Pins and bolts should be replaced within the struts to avoid unnecessary charges being incurred. Please observe the following points whilst using this equipment. Locate underground services before excavating. Inspect all components at the start of every shift. Ensure all pins and bolts are correctly fitted and are of the correct grade. Assemble the struts with a direction arrow uppermost. Use limit pins correctly. Assess weights accurately. Use adequate and appropriately certified lifting equipment. Be aware of hand pinch points during assembly and dismantling. Use 4-panel connectors to attach the upper boxes. Only use the designated lifting or handling points. Ensure the hooks engage fully into lifting points. Provide edge protection or handrail panels. Use a secured ladder or ladder safe to enter and leave the shored area. Push the plates at the corner positions only. Lay the box flat before dismantling. Store assembled boxes on firm level ground. Do not exit the box into an unsupported area. Do not snatch the chain during removal. Do not excessively force the box plates into the ground. Do not laterally load struts to close off the end of the trench. Do not permit personnel in the box during excavation and installation. Do not drag the box by any means. Do not fly the boxes above the base of the excavation unless approved by a competent person. And do not use bolts and pins other than supplied by Groundforce. Groundforce Shore Co. Be safe and sure.